Hello guys, so this is the beginning of a new series where I'm gonna make some guides to parkour maps. Now it's a little bit different from my other videos because this is gonna be mostly unedited, unscripted, whatever. And I just want to help people out with these courses that I know are really popular, but maybe there isn't a lot of advice online for how to complete them. Now, what courses am I recording? Well, I'm on a server called Linkcraft right now. If you're not familiar with Linkcraft, it's a 1.8 parkour server. And the main thing on the server is it has these courses in the game mode called a rank up. Now, if you're not familiar with rank up, it's basically like this is the first map, and then once you beat this one, you'll go on to the second map, which is harder, and then the third one, and so on. And they each have their own Roman numeral assigned to them, and like the higher Roman numeral, the harder, of course. So there's the 15 ranks from rank I, this is rank I, up to rank XV, which is the 15th and final one. And then once you complete that, you'll go do some harder maps somewhere else on the server, right? But these 15 main courses, I would highly recommend if you haven't tried them before. This is like really useful for improving at the game in general. If you're, trying to do a, oh gosh, I don't have desktop audio. Oh, never mind. Okay. I would highly recommend that you try these courses, but this is the first rank. If you want to go here, you would type /warp I in the chat, and then it'll just teleport here. Now, I'm not going to be playing these courses on the actual server. I'm actually going to give you advice from another server. Of course, if you want to actually beat the maps, then you would go on Linkcraft. But what I'm going to be using is something called UGIS. This is the IP of UGIS. Basically, it's a practice server where I can fly around to give. Let me go ahead and warp to it, where I can give you a little bit more detailed advice while being able to fly around. So you can see it's still the same map, but it'll just be easier to explain what's going on if I'm able to fly. So obviously, why don't we just get into it? So this is the first map. Obviously, you have some relatively simple parkour here. Make sure, I guess, you're using a sprint key. I know some people use double tapping W. This might be a good time to change that up. This is generally just like relatively simple parkour, just something you need to practice a lot, but it's not too bad. Now, for ladders, of course, make sure you're shifting on them on 1.8. On later versions, maybe you can hold space, but you're gonna make sure you can shift because you can grab the ladder from earlier if you do that. And then overall, these are just kind of the easy maps, but we'll get on to harder ones later on. Whenever you have these corner jumps in general, you typically want to shift to the edge here and then jam, where you hit W and space at the same time. You don't want to do something weird like this. Like, that'll work, but for later uses, I would recommend that you just jam like that. Right? And then you have some relatively simple stuff here. Just don't fall in the gaps, because some of those you get stuck. Have a slime. Now, if you're ever on a spooky jump, like if I'm on this jump and I'm like, oh gosh, this jump is real spooky, on here and on Linkcraft, you can type /prac, and it'll look slightly different on Linkcraft, but basically this is a practice mode where if I right-click this item, that I can teleport back to where I was, and then once I've practiced it sufficiently, I can type /unprac, and then I can try and do it for real once hopefully I'm more confident with the jump. But that's just something you can use if you're ever doing something spooky, Okay. Now, inside here, this is what we would call a fail-safe section, or if you abbreviated it, it would be FS. Basically, that just means that it's like one section where if you fail, then you just go back to the start of the section. You don't, like, for example, restart the map, So it's kind of its own thing that's separate from anything else, and you can treat it as like a safe point, Right. Again, make sure you're going to these corners and jumping. Now, you can't land on top of the ladder here, but you're still going to do the same thing. You're going to shift out to this corner, and then you're going to jam and make sure you shift on the ladder. And the same thing here, jam and shift. And then now we have like the kind of the contrary, like the, I don't know what you would call it, but it's like the opposite of fail-safe sections, where now you'll notice if I fall, then I'm going to lose progress in some way. So this would be called, it's a life or death section, which you would abbreviate as L/D, which obviously, you live if you make it to the end of it, and then you die, presumably, if you fall. So Make sure you especially use practice mode on these sections, and you can use timings like force momentum, which I cover in my parkour guide to help with some of the longer jumps, hopefully. So you might want to force momentum and shift here. This one's kind of well known. It's a little infamous jump. Just don't even jump here, just run off. And of course, practice if you're scared, but yeah. Then jam. And then this is like an important part of the map, or like all rank up maps have, or most of them have a section called Sky at the very end, which is a life or death section where if you fail, then you typically go to the start of the map, and it's, you know, sky because typically it's in the sky and it's kind of like the scary, intense part of the map. Now this map is relatively easy compared to some of the harder ones that you're on, but you know, it's generally just like the anxiety point, I guess, and it's like that final moment before you finally get to the end. So just take your time, especially with some of these longer, trickier jumps. Don't fall in these holes. Those are not safe. You'll fall. And then just have one last jump, and then you make it. And then you rank up. Now, on the real server, you would click this sign, it would teleport you to the next one. Because I'm on UGIS, it won't let me do that, so I'm just gonna warp to it. So that was the first rank, and then once you rank up, you'll get a special new color in chat, and you'll feel so happy and so proud of yourself. And then you'll have a harder map. So this is the second rank. All of them typically have a theme, like this is clearly a desert one. The last one was like I think it's a jungle temple. So that's interesting. So we'll just breeze through this one a little bit more. Just take your time. Just by like playing a bunch, you'll figure out more intuition about what works and what doesn't. And in general, practice is what is going to teach you the most, especially when you're on like some of these easier difficulty maps. There aren't too many tips I can give besides just keep trying it, you'll figure it out, you know? So jump down to the log here. And then again, you can use that jam timing and shift on the ladder. This is something weird, which is a water slime. You can actually bounce on the slime through the water, which is kind of interesting. And then just be careful with these tiny blocks. It can be easy to fall off. I do think that a lot of people I've seen underestimate these corners. It's actually pretty easy to hit these corners if you're not careful, so just make sure you start sufficiently far back so that you don't accidentally hit them along the way, and of course use practice mode where necessary. Right, and then this one's a little weird, but you got it. Land on top, there you go. And now we have a life or death section. Now typically you would also call them a transition, like a transition from one fail-safe section to another. Transitions are typically life or death, so if I fail, obviously I'm gonna have to restart the map, which would not be great. But now I'm on a fail-safe section, so I can just go all willy-nilly and have a good old time now. And then on, oh gosh, where am I going? Okay, there's a ladder here, I missed it. Okay, you would go from here, and you would grab the ladder, and then you're good. Cool. But yeah, on some of the more advanced maps, people will get like really excited about even like a single, reaching like a single failsafe section, you know? And there'll be like announcements in like the servers and whatever, just for somebody getting like one section of progress on like a huge map, you know? But just because it's so absurdly difficult. Just make sure you watch out for the ceilings here, you just want to shift around them. But okay, and then go up. Obviously, okay, that was a little rushed, but you would still use the same strategy. For these ones where you don't have the ladder on top, I didn't mention this, but landing on top is probably better because if you think about it, if you're trying to grab the ladder, you could like shift off by accident or you get too much speed. So that's just something to keep in mind. You're doing those. Now I think we're on Sky now. So for these early maps, Sky is just like a few jumps. It's pretty short and easy, which is nice. But there we go, and then shift on the ladder. And, oh, that one actually did teleport me. Alright, nice. Alright, this is the third rank. This one is a lot longer than the others, but you know, it's not too bad. If you could do the previous ones, you can do this one. So again, now for these, I would probably do a sprint jam instead, just because it's kind of like a further distance. Yeah. Then maybe sprint jam again. And then this is the first 3+1 I think has come up. Of course, you can use force momentum. And it's, again, make sure you watch my guides, my parkour guide, if you don't know what that timing is, because it's going to help you a lot on some of those longer jumps. And then just be careful with these stairs, of course. It's kind of easy to slide off. And then jam here just makes this really easy. Okay, I should walk off here, and now we're on a failsafe section, so it can have a good time. Now some of these things are like unnamed. Like this transition right here, it doesn't have a name because I guess it just didn't have a name because it's kind of like unimportant. Like even for the people who play this map, they're like in those failsafe sections for such a short amount of time that, you know, why do we even need to name these things? But on some of the harder maps, you would typically have a name, like your section 1 or section 2 or machine 5 if it's an arcade map. Now this section is failsafe. So on the harder maps, you'll typically have some way to notate. You force momentum here. There's typically a way to notate and differentiate the sections. Now for this is X-facing. If you're not familiar with X-facing, I should have a guide about that at some point out, but basically it just means that this corner is like harder to pass than normal. One thing you could do is if you shift to this back corner, you could do head hitter timing. That'll typically get around X-facing corners just fine. The other thing you could do, I wouldn't really recommend this, but you could try and just get a lot of speed like that. Just because if you try and jam this, well, I guess it does kind of work, but it's kind of awkward because you'll end up hitting the wall. So you can use practice mode, figure out what works well there. Okay. But yeah, it's the harder maps, they typically have names for the sections. So for example, one way that you might notate if this is this like outer area, if this was like section 3, then one way you might notate that is like S3, and you'll have abbreviations like that. And then if there was a section 4 that came after this, but there was a transition between the two sections, then you might notate that as S3 to S4 with like a dash between them. So now this jump's pretty long. You should be able to force momentum this, but if you want to get more momentum, then you can. You might be able to just, yeah, if you just jam and then tap space every time. Because one thing you might not know is if you hold space when you go up by a block, it doesn't actually jump instantly. So you have to make sure you re-tap space when you go up the block there. Okay, and then just some simple jumps. Have a long one, so we're going to use force momentum, of course. It's basically always going to be force momentum for these early maps. Okay, and then we'll go this way. And then I have been breezing past some of the, of course you can still use force momentum on a ladder. Just make sure that whenever you're trying to get good momentum that you might want to pay attention to what angle you're facing. You could open F3 and look at this number, for example. Make sure you're not gonna jump off or hit the wall. But in general, I have been kind of rushing through like the momentums, but there are like, what am I trying to say? If I had like 3 blocks of momentum, there are like standard setups for what to do. Like there isn't just force momentum. See if I can find a good example. Let me like find a good example. If you have a long jump, maybe I won't get a good example, but that's fine. All right, now I think we just have a couple more jumps, then we're gonna be on sky. It is pretty spooky, but you know, just take your time. It'll be fine. This one, I would say probably just jam this, and then I'm good to go. Oh gosh, don't fall off. Okay, now we're on sky. It's relatively simple, just don't fall off. I think that's pretty obvious, probably. Oh shoot, I fell off. Okay, make sure you shift all the way to the back of the block. I didn't shift all the way to the back, so therefore force momentum like over jumped, but there you go. Alright, that's the third rank. Let's see, I think I will have a good example here in a second. Yeah, I will. Oh yes, I will. These are kind of long, so you might want to force momentum these, but... And then, this one is 1BM diagonal, but you could still force momentum at an angle. It'll still fit. Now you could force momentum this, but this, I guess this doesn't really have a standard setup. Just force momentum this. It's fine. We'll jam this. Nice, nice. I've seen a bunch of people get screwed up on this. This is a 4 block, and you have another 4 block. You can use the ice and just go all the way through this. But, you know, I found that to be kind of difficult the first time I did this. You can actually just ignore the ice and just force momentum both of these individually if you feel confident with force momentum, which you should probably learn that if you're not. Because the ice only affects, like, the center of the block. Like, I'm affected now, and I'm not now, right? So if I force momentum, then I'm not going to get affected by the ice because I'm just going to jump over the hitbox entirely. Just make sure you shift on that. Right. Cool. Alright, now... Actually, we're not on a failsafe yet. I was going to say we are, but we have to do this thing first. Can you jam here? Yeah, you can just jam there if you want to set up. For some reason, there's a floating trapdoor here. I don't know why they never fixed that, but that's just still there. Okay. Of course, you're gonna jam these as always. You're basically, every time you find something like this, even when it's gonna be, even if this ladder is missing and there's just one here, you're still gonna jam this. That's still the standard strategy. Okay. Now, we want to do force momentum, but it's kind of like a diagonal momentum. So one setup that works here is you can do 3 unshift taps and then force momentum. But if you don't know taps, then you could always just do something like that, and that's going to work fine, especially for you know, some of these earlier ranks. It's not too precise in terms of distance. This is kind of long, but you just do it and then it works. Okay. Cool. And this part's relatively simple. And I think this is the part where most of the people on this map get stuck, and it's mostly just because there's a bunch of 4 block jumps. If you have 2 blocks of momentum, a good setup to remember would be to face outward into jam and then turn in. You'll get a better intuition for how far you have to turn out, because if you don't, you just go over. But just turn out some amount, turn in. It's a good setup, so you don't have to do force momentum, whatever. But anyway, if you know force momentum, that's basically like the summary of this episode. Basically, please learn force momentum if you don't know force momentum, because it's gonna make your life so much easier. This one's kind of long, but just kind of go for it. You'll make it work. Okay, 3 blocks, force momentum. Perfect. I did get a little lazy there. I didn't force momentum. Sometimes if you're feeling lazy, you can just run it. But if you fail, that's your fault, you know. But in general, if you're on a hard map, probably do force momentum. Now this is Sky. This one's a little atypical because we didn't really have an LD part of this map, a life or death part. It was kind of just like one giant section for the most part, and now we're on Sky. And then the Sky for this map is also like really long. Oh my gosh, I failed that. Oh no. The Sky for this map is also really long compared to the other maps, but it's fine. I think this rank in general is kind of weird. I don't know why it's kind of unusual. I think the rank after this is pretty cool, actually. I think it's the first, like, actually kind of interesting rank. One thing that's notable here is that if you don't know, 3-block ceilings make you jump lower. So when I do force momentum, I actually don't land very far forward. I land like, let's see, how far forward is that? I land like 0.2 blocks away from the edge, whereas normal force momentum lands, you know, less, I guess. That's all I'm gonna say on that. So, just keep that in mind, that the 3-block ceiling will affect you. So you can do an unshift tap here if you want, but it's not too relevant here, but in general, you should probably keep in mind the effects that 3-block ceilings have. I'm just gonna do another unshift tap here as well. Because if you don't know, that's a good setup for a 1 block plus a ladder, is to do an unshift tap. Okay, I'm just gonna jam this just like you would do like a single neo. Okay. Cool. And then we have our, you would conventionally call this final stretch of sky, as in like it's the part that goes like straight to the end, basically. Like a lot of skies on longer maps are very long to the extent that we need to like segment the sky to have like different names for parts of it. So we would call this last part of sky final stretch. It's like, you know, you're finally almost there. Oh, one thing you can do on some of these maps, you don't even have to do the last jump. You can literally reach this sign from here, I think. Yeah, you can literally reach it. Okay. Alright, this is the last one I'm going to do in this video. This map, it looks huge. Now, I guess the one thing with this map is it's like, this is learning nerve control once you get to this rank, because it's actually not that long. It's not as big as it looks. And it's because there's signs that teleport you to other parts of the map throughout it. So what you might want to do is just kind of, it's a nerve control thing of putting the map into perspective. I know I was really nervous when I first played this map. For this, probably head hitter timing. But anyway, this is a cooler map than the other ones, I think. One thing you can do is, even if you don't have a full ceiling, I like to do a Pessy setup with these anyway, because you're still going to bonk your head, it's still going to jump at the end of the block, you'll still get good momentum. So that's one thing you can do. Here you could go under or you could go around. You could technically like 3 shift taps and then 5 tick from here, but it's like awkward because you have to shift instantly and whatever. I think I would recommend going to this corner and then doing head hitter timing and just trying to avoid that corner. There's a few things you could do there. Now we're on our first transition. Just take your time. Of course, the stone buttons are not barriers, they're just decoration. That had me fooled one time. I definitely didn't fall because of that, don't worry about it. Okay. Cool. For some reason there's a hole here. Don't fall in it. You'll get stuck. You'll be really sad. I don't know why it's there. It's because they hate us for some reason. I don't know. Make sure you practice this because it's really easy to get too much speed and then go too far over the slime. Because on later versions, the slime extends to the full hitbox, but on 1.8, obviously, it doesn't. So just make sure you practice it, because that'll be very helpful, probably. This room is a little devious. It's a little devious because it's really hard to do this over and over again. One setup that'll work really well here is do 1 unshift tap and run. Because normally with 1 block of momentum, you want to do force momentum, but of course you can't. So I would say 1 unshift tap and run. 1 unshift tap and run. 1 unshift tap and run. Just do that over and over again. And then for some of these corner jumps, you can also just jam from the end because it's short enough. But for these that are 2 blocks, you're gonna have to run them because you're not gonna have enough speed. Here we have 3 shift taps and 5 tick. 1 unshift tap and run. Boom, boom. For these corners, you can just walk across them, which is pretty nice. One shift tap and run. 3 shift taps, run. There you go. Right. Now we're on to the next transition. You can see like we're already like super high up, even though we've only been playing for like a minute. So that's the thing with this map, with the signs that teleport you. Okay, now for this, using practice mode, you can find like a setup ahead of time that works. For example, I know that force momentum's it's gonna go too far, but if I try this, maybe if I jam from the front, oh look at that, if I just jam from these coordinates, then it just works. So then I can go out of practice mode and then jam, and it does the whole thing for me. Or of course you could just do each of these one by one, but you know, there's alternate strategies to these things. Okay. And then of course this map is space themed, so now we're on Earth. And the satellite is like really close to Earth for some reason. Okay. Just make sure you shift quickly there. Oh, actually we get the ladder +2 now. Okay, so this jump is called a ladder +2. And it's because it's a ladder and it goes 2 up. I hope that's obvious to everybody. But anyway, you're going to use the same strategy as before. If you're wondering, okay, so you go to the corner and then you're going to face outward. How far outward do you face? If you want an exact angle, I would recommend 60 degrees out. Now in this case, 60 degrees would be 90 plus 60 is 150. So the angle is going to be one of 30, 60, 150, or I don't know if I'm missing another angle, but it's gonna add 60 degrees basically. And then from here, you're gonna jam. I'll go into practice mode just so I can, I'll turn on keystrokes quickly as well, just so I can make this a little more visual, because you need to do this a few more times than the rest of the map as well. So you're gonna jam, and then you're gonna hit D right afterwards. So you're gonna add D, and you can notice, maybe you can't notice, that I can immediately grab the ladder even without turning, right? So that's one of the advantages of these coordinates. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna jam, add D, and then turn in and add shift. And of course, this whole time you're not sprinting, right? So keep that strategy in mind. That's basically what you're gonna do every time one of these come up. I'll just keep keystrokes on. You can look at my funny keyboard inputs if it makes you happy. Okay, just gonna jam again. And then if you fail this, those daylight sensors down there, you can jump to a previous area, so you're still fine if you fall, but you just want to be careful. Just gonna jam this like a Neo. Cool. Now I would use, for something like this, I would probably use a setup that I already know. For example, I know 2 blocks. Oh gosh, I'm lagging. Oh no, I'm gonna lag out or something. I know 2 blocks. It lines up at Z.3. Oh, there you go, now it's lagging. So I can just go to slightly about 2 blocks back, since I remember earlier that when I had 2 blocks, I would jam at an angle and turn straight. So what I could do is I could set up at 2 blocks and do that, or I could go slightly further backward and just do it straight. So that's one thing you can do, is trying to apply setups in places that you might not immediately see a setup. Okay, just force momentum on this. Just stay clear of the soul sand. 2 things here, you could jam like this if you're feeling fancy, and you can do the long jump, but you can also just shift to the corner here and jam. Okay. Right, I think we have another ladder +2 here. Yeah, we do. So you're gonna face, this case is gonna be 120 degrees. And then do the same strategy as before. Cool. Oh yay, we get ice. Everybody loves ice, right? So again, if you don't like the ice effect, I just like trying to avoid it entirely. I don't even try to deal with it. I just go to the edge where I don't get affected by it, and I just jam, and I just jam. And then this one's slightly longer, but if I'm scared of that, I can just force momentum, and then that works, right? In this case, it's kind of awkward because it feels like you have to get the ice effect. I would just shift forward a bit, and then I can still just force momentum this, basically, is what I'm saying. Right. Okay, we have our first like kind of long jump. Just like keep trying this a few times. Just get a feel for the ice momentum. Nothing too difficult. You just keep giving it a few tries. Because you only need to do it once anyway. Okay. We have one more teleport sign. Cool. I think there's an awkward ceiling here. I think it's this. Maybe. Just be careful of this ceiling. It's easy if you jump early for something like that to happen. So one thing you might want to do is shift to the edge and jam, so you can just avoid it entirely. And then you're onto sky, I think. Okay, we're gonna, because we have a ceiling, we're gonna use the alternate 1BMM strat, which is to do one unshift tap and run. Okay, and now we're on sky. Now this looks incredibly scary. I know it was scary the first time I did it, but you know, you'll get through it. You'll survive. You'll live another day. Just take your time on a few of these things. I think this is the first like rank up I would call like serious, because it feels like an actual rank up. So maybe I'll just force momentum at an angle there. For this, a lot of people like to chain this, like going all the way. You can if you want. I just think that's a little scary, so I would personally just force momentum each individually, especially on this last one because it's kind of long in comparison to the other jumps, especially like timing those when it's when you're nervous is kind of hard. So again, 60 degrees outward is 60 degrees in this case. Do the same strategy. Just gonna force momentum this. Nice. Now the brewing stands, they cover the same hitbox as a block. You just want to make sure that like you won't want to force momentum this if this is like half the size of a block, for example, because then you might fall off. But you can force momentum these normally and know that you're not gonna fall off, even though it looks like a weird hitbox. That's the only thing. Okay, 60 degrees. Just do the same input. Great. Okay, we have scary ladders. We have scary ladders confirmed. You can go to the corner and jam this. This one I would probably stand backward a bit before doing it, just because you get so much speed from sprinting. Just practice it. Make sure you slow down sufficiently. It's really easy to accidentally get too much speed. For this one, you can just jam it. Keep in mind that these are literally just 3-block jumps, just they look fancier, they look scarier, I guess. So as long as you're like lining up your angle so that you can do it straight, it's as easy as doing a jam, you know? That's all you gotta do. Okay, now I would line up any of the setups I know. One setup, since we haven't used it yet, is 6 blocks. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I line up at about the back of a 6th block. If I'm not sure if I lined up right, just use practice mode, make sure it works. And of course it does. So then we'll just do it in real mode. So that's it. That's another setup to know, as 6 blocks is really good for a jam, and you just hold space. Cool. And then we'll just do this, I guess. And one last jump, and we are free. So those are the first 5 ranks of Linkcraft. I'm gonna make some follow-up videos where I go through the rest of the ranks, but that should be all for now. I hope this was helpful if you are struggling on any of them, or if you haven't tried them yet, I would recommend that you try them. I think personally that rank up is one of the best ways to get better at parkour. So that's about all. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.